I am here with Varun Parmar, the GM for Adobe GenStudio and Firefly Enterprise. Varun, it's great to have you here.
Nice to be here, Akash. Yeah.
So tell us about what GenStudio actually is.
Yeah, so every brand and agency has a content supply chain. That content supply chain has multiple sort of steps in the process. You start off with the creative brief, then you go into creation and production, then you go and activate that content, and then you look at the insights of what's working versus not to feed it back into the content, right? And at the heart of this is asset management. That's your digital asset management repository. So GenStudio is Adobe's solution to the content supply chain for every single brand and agency.
So this is a software that companies can use to basically end-to-end create a marketing campaign, an advertising campaign, whether it's creating the assets and then also distributing them to all of these social media platforms, stuff like that.
Exactly. It brings the best together in terms of the marketing workflows along with the creative workflows into a single unified solution that is now turbocharged with a lot of AI innovation.
And so I want to sort of focus on both sides of this. One is the content creation and one is kind of the content distribution for marketers. On the creation side, you guys have been announcing a lot of stuff this week, and we're going to talk about that. But I'm actually very interested in the distribution side. Tell us about some of the ad integration products and services that you're launching this week.
Yeah, so we have Adobe GenStudio for performance marketing, where a performance marketer can self-serve themselves in terms of activation and then looking at the insights of what's working across all of these channels. So what the product or the solution allows you to do is essentially one click, take all of the content that you've produced and then activate it omni-channel across different ad networks.
And when you say activate, what does activate mean for us, for who aren't marketers by trade?
Exactly. So once you have this content, you need to create like an ad unit, and then you need to actually take that content, load it into whatever the platform is, be it Meta, be it Google, TikTok, LinkedIn, so on and so forth. So all of these are different platforms. So instead of going and uploading all of that content into the platform, you can use Adobe GenStudio to one click take all of the content that was produced in the solution and then publish it over to this platform,
right? So
that you can then do all of the things around like how much money you want to spend on this campaign and then actually serve it to your audiences.
And was this something that customers said that they wanted from you? Well, why create this new integration?
So one of the big pain points in this activation on publishing flow is that there's this thing called tracking ID, which is essentially looking at a campaign and saying, hey, there's a set of content I'm going to use for a certain audience. So there's this really long sort of name of the campaign that's actually put together. That is the way you actually track the performance of the campaign. So usually what you have is a bunch of these marketers have these spreadsheets that they maintain. These are hundreds and hundreds of rows that they create in order to track every single variant of this asset that was produced against the campaign that you're running and the amount of money that you're spending and the audience that's there. With Adobe GenStudio, we are fully automating this end-to-end, this entire process of creating the tracking ID. So never ever you'll actually run into the process of where you see some of these errors in terms of either activation or reporting back. So streamlining that actually has a huge benefit for these performance marketers. And you can think of they have hundreds of campaigns running at a given time across multiple products, and there's a lot of spend associated with that. So small errors in this workflow can actually mean big impact.
I want to talk a little bit about the business that Adobe is known for, which is the front half of that story, which is the content creation side of it. And we were just talking earlier, I mean, you are a boomerang to Adobe. You came back to the company after 15 years. All of these AI tools that are getting created to help people generate all this content, I wonder how you think about that as a product person, building that in a way that doesn't cannibalize the business that Adobe has built its foundation on, because a lot of people, would use all these tools, Premiere, Photoshop, to edit and create stuff by hand. It's a very it's a carefully curated process. Now we can do it all with AI. And so how do you think about that issue from a product design perspective?
Yeah, so I think there are two things I would say. Like, one is that you have to be deeply embedded into the workflow that an organization has, right? So if you think about a typical marketing campaign, the number of steps that are involved in terms of looking at the creative brief. In the creative brief, it talks about the audience that you're going after, right? There's certain messages that are going to resonate. There's certain creatives that are going to resonate, right? And there's an entire orchestration of workflow that happens. So while it's really, really easy to just create an image or a video that's 15 or 30-second long, it is still very hard to actually create something that's actually going to perform, is going to give you the ROI, is going to actually resonate with your customers so that they click on that button and that's going to actually drive some, conversions for you. So, from Adobe's perspective, we have, AI models that we've created. You're going to hear about a lot of exciting news in terms of the third-party model integration and stuff. But what's really critical is that for a large brand or an agency to really realize value, all of that innovation has to be fully integrated into the workflow that these marketers and creatives have. And that's the unique sort of perspective that we bring in,
You talked about some of the other models that Adobe is now moving to work with. I wonder from your perspective, we have all these different models. I wonder if maybe they're all going to converge at some point, because right now it feels like, well, this model is good for audio, this model is good for video, this model is good for this type of video. Are they all going to converge in the long run, do you think? Or are we going to be in a world where we have to sort of live in this marketplace of 12, 13 different models and pick and choose?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I do quite often is like look at the history and see, is that a predictor of what's going to happen in the future? And Adobe has been a creative company for, well over 40 years. And we have products, that actually span all of the modalities. So what we've seen is that the persona for these products are very different. So we have Adobe Illustrator, which is a product for vector graphics. We have Adobe Photoshop, which is the best tool for imaging. We have Premiere Pro, which is for video. So our point of view is that there is no one model that's going to rule it all, that we will continue to see like models specialize in specific areas, focused on specific use cases and workflow integrations.
And last question for you, going back to your point here on ROI, right? Because I love this idea that it's not enough just to create the content, you have to be able to measure it. How good are these tools right now? I mean, can you just develop the video, or does it still take as much time to edit the video, to edit the campaign, to find ways to measure the ROI? I mean, what can't the AI do right now for us?
Yeah, so I think there's obviously the notion of like, what does the brand stand for, and any piece of content, does it actually meet the brand guidelines, right? So that's one aspect of it. I think the other aspect of it is that, in terms of looking at the performance of what's really working in that ad unit, you need to actually do some really deep analysis of what are the attributes in that image, what are the attributes in that video frame, what is it in terms of the music genre that actually worked, to really understand that for that given spend and the audience that you're going after, what are the things, the attributes that actually are working, and then feed that back into the model so it understands, what are these characteristics. So I would say there's still a whole lot of work that actually goes in to actually understand piece of the content, the activation channel, the performance insights, the audience characteristic that actually then needs to be fed back into the model.
Great. Well, Varun, I know you got a busy week, so we'll let you get back to it. Thank you very
so
much for being here.
Thank
Appreciate it.
Thank you.